Today on Generation Gap Gaming, I'm going to show you my top 10 underrated NES games. Let's get started. What's up guys, if this is your first time here at the channel, my name is Tyler, and if you love gaming from all generations like we do here at G3, then consider hitting that subscribe button and hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss anything. Number 10 on my list is the NES port of the 1984 arcade classic Marble Madness. It's an isometric platform game where you guide a marble through maze-like obstacle courses before the time runs out. The arcade version used a trackball, so the D-pad controls on the NES take a little time to get used to, but this game becomes so addictive because you try to swerve and dodge your way to the finish line with the best time so those seconds can carry over to the next round. And you have to be extremely precise with your movements or you'll easily fall off the edges or get taken out by the obstacles like wrecking balls, vacuums, or pools of acid. The soundtrack is great, and the different paths you can take to the finish line are so fun, like secret tunnels and even catapults. This game is easily in my own top 20 NES games, but Ranker.com has it listed at number 89, which is way low in my opinion. Next on the list is one of my favorite movie-based NES games published by LJN.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I know it's LJN, but they get a bad rap. And number 9 on my list is The Karate Kid. This was released back in 1987, and it was mostly based on the Karate Kid 2 movie, although you start out fighting the All Valley tournament where you take out Johnny, even though this dude looks nothing like Johnny. I mean, they couldn't even give this guy blonde hair, come on! But other than that, the background in the tournament stage looks pretty close to the movie, and you do get to do the crane kick, so that's awesome. Once you win the tournament, the rest of the game takes place in Okinawa, and it's a mix of platforming and fighting off thugs while also trying to find some secret locations to do some side games from famous scenes from the movie, like breaking ice blocks, catching flies with chopsticks, and dodging a swinging hammer, which I still can't figure out, by the way. I think the overall essence of the movies are captured pretty well in this game, and I always enjoyed it, but it's ranked 105 on Ranker.com's list, which shocked me, and I think people just see the LJN logo and write it off before even giving it a try. Number 8 was a game that I was actually only able to find at my local video store to rent, and I rented it at least 3 times, and it was hailed as Nintendo's first video board game, and that game is Anticipation. This game was released in 1988 and was developed by Rare. It basically combined the popular board games Pictionary and Trivial Pursuit in a game that slowly draws a picture and you buzz in when you think you know the answer and you get 25 seconds to enter your guess. It can really get tense trying to fill in all these letters in that amount of time, but that's half the fun. What's also good is this game can actually make use of the NES 4-score adapter to allow up to 4 people to have their own controller to play with. Honestly, I think what made this game go so unnoticed is the cover art. I mean, I really believe this is the absolute worst cartridge art of any NES game. I mean, what is this? And keep in mind, this game was developed by Rare. You know, the same team that brought us Battletoads, RC Pro-Am, Wizards and Warriors, not to mention future classics like GoldenEye on the 64. They completely dropped the ball on this one, and it's a shame because it's definitely one of the best family games on the NES. Number 7 is another game that I was never ashamed to play until I was an adult because of how the internet hates on LJN so much. But I still love it, and that game is Friday the 13th. This game was released in 1989, and Jason was terrifying everyone in the theaters and at home on their VCRs. I mean, how can you not love the box art and the title screen for this game? It's awesome. You control one of 6 Camp Crystal Lake counselors and mostly a side-scrolling campaign. The ultimate goal is to kill Jason 3 times before all the children or counselors have been killed. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, the map and overall gameplay is a bit wonky and takes some time getting used to, but I still find it fun just because this was the first game that I can remember actually being scared while playing. I mean, when you're in one of the cabins at night and you turn a corner and Jason pops out, it's pretty startling. Even though the developers thought it would be cool to have Jason wear a teal mask and purple clothes. I know people crap on this game all the time like AVGN, but it's one of my most cherished games in my collection that I actually have complete in box. Number 6 is one of the most original and overlooked sports titles on the NES, and I'm talking about Baseball Simulator 1000. This game was released in 1990, and on the surface it looks like your ordinary baseball game, but it's way far from that. You can choose teams from either normal or ultra baseball leagues. The ultra baseball teams have players with superpowers to boost their hitting and pitching, while the normal teams don't. I mean, who in their right mind would choose a normal baseball team in this game? I don't even know why it's an option. You can do some pretty amazing things to a baseball in this game. I think my favorite is the laser hit though, because it just blasts all the way to the wall like it's nothing. You can have your choice of different stadiums to play in, and even a space stadium, which was so innovative at the time, and it brought some life back into baseball games on the NES. I can't believe this game is ranked 242 on Ranker.com, because it's hands down the best baseball game on the NES. Next on our list is another game that gets unnecessary hate just because it's from LJN, and number 5 on my list is Jaws. Now I promise this is the last LJN title on the list, so don't go anywhere just yet. Jaws was released on the NES in 1987 and is a single-player action game where you pilot your boat across the ocean, traveling back and forth collecting conch shells. You can use as currency in order to collect tracking equipment for the shark and build up your character's power traveling to and from the 2 ports on the game. If you last long enough during an enemy sequence, you're sometimes awarded with a bonus scene where you can fly a plane over the ocean like in Jaws 4: The Revenge and drop depth charges from the plane to destroy jellyfish doing some sort of synchronized swimming routine in order to be awarded some shells. Once you feel you're strong enough to take down Jaws, you can find him pretty easily, and in all honesty, he'll probably find you first. Now just whittle down his energy bar and then ultimately stab Jaws with the tip of your boat and finally send him to the ocean floor never to be seen again. This game is definitely in my top 10 NES games list, and it has one of, if not the best NES title screens and title music ever. Given Konami's impressive contributions to the NES like the Castlevania and Contra series, you wouldn't expect to have one of their games on an underrated list, but number 4 is Goonies II. This game was released back in 1987, and I've played this game for over 30 years, and I honestly just found out this year that there was a Goonies 1 game. I always assumed the Goonies 2 title just meant it was a sequel to the actual movie, but there actually was a Goonies 1 game released only on the Famicom. I have just realized that I've got sidetracked.
You have derailed. Shut up, Richard.
Okay, now back to Goonies 2. The game centers around Mikey trying to save his friends from the Fratellis at their secret hideout. Mikey has to rescue all 6 of his friends and for whatever reason save a mermaid named Annie. The 8-bit cover of Cyndi Lauper's Goonies Are Good Enough song from the movie is one of the best songs on any NES game. The music is by far what makes this game so memorable. The gameplay is a mix of platforming and first-person gaming. The first-person view reminds me a lot of Friday the 13th, but navigating the map in this game takes some getting used to because there's both a front and a back side to the map. I have to admit it's a very quirky game with some odd maneuvers you have to perform in order to progress, like having to hit an old lady in the face 5 times to retrieve an item. I'm serious, you gotta do that. I'm starting to convince myself that maybe this isn't underrated. Nah, I'm just kidding. This game is super fun with all the music, exploring, and using some really fun weapons like a yo-yo and a slingshot. I mean, it's Konami, you can't go wrong. Number 3 on my list is so underappreciated that it's actually ranked 209th on Ranker.com, which is an absolute travesty. I'm talking about the action sports title based on the hit TV show American Gladiators. This show was on fire back in the early 90s, and the NES released this game in 1991 and featured 5 of the popular events performed on the show: the Joust, the Wall, Human Cannonball, Powerball, and Assault. The game adaptations were pretty spot on with the real-life events, but the developers mixed in a bit of platforming here and there to help bring the gameplay together. The screams of the gladiators when they fall off the platforms is absolutely hilarious. And if you're able to successfully beat all 5 events, you can try to take on the Eliminator stage, consisting of platforming I-beams, conveyor belts, and zip lines. I was never able to beat the Eliminator, but this game is a blast and holds so true to its real counterpart, and I really can't believe it's not commonly in the top NES games of all time. Next on the list is the last NES game I remember purchasing before I got my Sega Genesis. I'm so glad I bought this game too because it's become one of my personal top 10 NES games of all time. Number 2 on my list is the 1991 fishing game, the Blue Marlin.
Come on, got me a marlin! Yeah!
This game was developed by Hot B, which was the same company that gave us the Black Bass. Now just look at the graphics between these 2 games. The Black Bass can't even come close to comparing with the Blue Marlin, yet the Black Bass is talked about more and ranked much higher at 216 compared to the Blue Marlin's rank of 475. I mean, in the Blue Marlin you get to choose your ports and enter various fishing tournaments with some great music to listen to while you're trying to land that next big fish. The gameplay is very rhythmic in order to be able to reel in some big fish in the most efficient way possible. As you bring in more fish, you can build up your muscle power, body strength, and skill to help you finally bring in those giant sharks and marlins and destroy the competition. Just like in real fishing, a lot of this game is luck too, because there's no better feeling in this game than when you get the cutscene telling you the fish is exhausted and for you to go for it. I think the only reason this game is so underrated is that it came out late in the life of the NES, and a lot of people just weren't looking for as many NES games at that time. Now before we get to number 1, I want to include a couple honorable mentions. I'm not including them in the top 10 because these games are mostly well known and most people like them, but I still see them rank lower than they should be in different top NES lists. The first honorable mention is Star Tropics. Like I said, most NES fans are familiar with the game, and I remember seeing commercials for it when it came out in 1990, but I never knew what type of game it was until I tried it on the NES Classic Edition. This is an amazing action-adventure game that has a very similar 2D top-down view that plays a lot like the original Legend of Zelda, because you have both overworld and dungeon-style gameplay, and you get to do some puzzle work as well. Not to mention, this game is so heavy-laden with hilarious stereotypical American pop culture references from a Japanese developer's perspective, like our main character Mike being a cola-drinking kid who loves baseball and has a great pitching arm, which apparently really helps him out using the yo-yo as a weapon. The original game box even came with a piece of paper that had a secret message to be used in the game when it reacted with water. This wasn't the real message, but it's true, Dr. Mario is garbage, but Star Tropics is an all-time classic that should always be in the top NES lists. The other honorable mention is Batman the video game from Sunsoft. This is a near-perfect side-scrolling platformer that plays much like Ninja Gaiden. This game has wonderful cutscenes between levels, and the wall jump ability and different sub-weapons to choose from help bring you some of the tightest controls on the NES. Don't get me wrong, this game has a steep learning curve, but it's well worth the time you put into it trying to get good, and the final battle with the Joker is one of the most memorable boss fights on the NES. It's finally time for my number 1 underrated NES game, and I totally just stumbled on this game a few years ago while looking at a complete NES games list about 4 years ago, and I was absolutely blown away by this hidden gem. I'm talking about Nightshade. This game was released back in 1992 by Konami's US affiliate Ultra Games. It takes place in Metro City, where crime rules the streets after the beloved superhero Vortex was murdered by the game's villain, Sutek. You take control of the street vigilante called Nightshade, who decides it's up to him to bring Sutek and his evil empire down. The game is a mix of point-and-click adventure and action gameplay. You start the game tied to a chair and have to avoid a bomb and make your way over to a candle to burn through the ropes so you can escape, so I knew this wasn't your ordinary NES game right from the start. You then proceed to the next room where you have an action sequence where you have to fight the cop from the Cookie Crisp commercials. All kidding aside, I was immediately hooked after these first 2 scenes, and I couldn't believe I've never heard of this game. In addition to the expected health bar in the game, there's the innovative popularity meter that would go up or down if Nightshade would talk to the public and perform good deeds and side quests for them. If he had a good popularity rating, then the public would be more talkative and willing to help him through the game. You get a total of 5 lives in the game, and each time you die, you're basically put in a death trap by Sutek that you need to escape in order to get back to the game. And these are quite challenging, but they're really fun. The 5th trap you're put in is inescapable, and it's lights out for Nightshade. There's also a lot of goofy humor and a playful vibe to the game that gives it quite a bit of charm. In all honesty, if you haven't played this game, please try it because you won't be disappointed. And it's unbelievable that this game is ranked 473 on the all-time NES games lists on Ranker.com. Do you agree with my top 10? Let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know what some of your underrated NES games are. And if you haven't watched our overrated NES games video, then check it out up here in the card. Until next time, guys, G3 out.